Island Club to present to you Chief Wole Olanipekun, CFR, SN, in recognition and appreciation of your contributions, incisive insights, and patriotic engagement as a special guest and panel discussant at today's event, today, the 2nd of October, 2025. Thank you very much. We did enjoy the session. I wish you all the very best.
And the last but not the least, to Professor Hosa Osage, may I invite the Lufoshan of Ifoshan, Chief Sir Michael Olumiwa Falomo, to help us with this presentation.
Prof, it's always a pleasure to see you, and thank you for being there every now and again. You always perform brilliantly, and thanks for doing just that today. God bless you. So on behalf of the chairman and the management committee of Island Club, I present you with this plaque of honor to thank you for a brilliant performance as usual. God bless you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I get a round of applause for all awardees in the house, please?
We've had a very robust and engaging session. Today we've had soul-searching questions, very difficult questions. And as one of our discussants said, the fault is not in our stars, it's in us, and therefore we are the agency that we seek. If we must move forward, then of course we have to all rise up to that responsibility. But permit me, before I open the floor, for a few comments and observations and questions, to try to put all of this that we have heard today in proper perspective. The point about all that we have heard today is that Africa is now tired of development and progress making by mimicry and analogy. What we have suffered from can be summarized in one sentence: that we have had a process of incomplete state building across Africa. And in order for us to understand that, I want to suggest to us that we've had two phases of our liberation and coming of age. The first was the first independence movement. Now, that was when we all looked forward to independence from colonization, not colonialism. But think of where we were coming from, because on at least 4 occasions, Professor Lumumba talked about Nigeria regaining its independence. Now, historically, that cannot be correct, because Nigeria is a very recent creation. 65 years and so on, but Nigeria is not an organic creation. If you take the map of Africa on the eve of 1884, 1885 in Berlin, and you take the map of Africa today, you would not recognize or identify Nigeria anywhere. There was no country called Nigeria. So to that extent, Nigeria is a very recent creation. And I want to suggest to you that the precepts that guided Nigeria's creation were not precepts that were defined or determined by the Africans themselves. They were rather imposed. And so what we've been doing since we were formed as countries is playing catch up, wanting to live up to the expectations of the states that have been formed through colonization. That's a very difficult process. Now, that's the first independence movement. There were expectations of rising expectation, revolution rather, of rising expectations that visited us at independence, followed very quickly by a revolution of rising frustrations because the hopes, the expectations of independence were now a bridge too far. And so, historically, it became imperative for us to move to what has been described as the second independence movement. That's where we are. The second independence movement is devoted to rebuilding and reconfiguring the state that was inherited at independence. Because now it is a state that has to deal with human beings, not simply getting political independence. Now, that framework is very important because the unraveling that we find across Africa is unraveling that is saying the state that we inherited is not the kind of state that we think is appropriate for us. And that's why all of these things are continuing, but in the process, we are all rebuilding a state that lawyers describe as autochthonous, the kind of state that can patently become our own states, organic states, but we must all be part of that renegotiation and rebargaining. So there's hope, and I think that that is the point. Let me say, for those of us who have put ethnicity on the board here, that you're only partially correct. Ethnicity as ethnic identity might be regarded as one of the givings of life. You can say it's one of those definitions that as an individual you wear as a man or a woman. You also have an ethnic identity. Now that's a giving of life. It can be fixed, but you can change it if you like to. Ethnicity is not exactly the same thing as morbid ethnic identity. So in other words, ethnicity is not inevitable. Ethnicity is a dependent condition. It's a dependent variable. There are things that drive ethnicity. Many things, such as we can put them as forms of injustice, exclusion, discrimination, and so on. Ethnicity simply is a response to a situation that is not considered just and equitable. And so, for as long as people are treated unjustly and so on, they will respond. So ethnicity becomes one of the responses to such a situation. So from that definition, it is not inevitable. Africa is not the only place with very strong ethnic identities. India, Pakistan, name all of those countries. They all have very strong and fixed ethnic identities, yet through processes of bargaining and negotiation, give and take, we have been able to address and manage the kinds of problems that will come from diversity. Now, I think that that's a big challenge, but we must not lose the point that overall has also defined the discussions here today. Yes, it's true, Nigeria has a responsibility to lead Africa. Now, Nigeria has always led Africa. Nigeria is going to lead Africa. And I want to let you know that the world is unraveling. There is a push towards a new global order, and we're all witnesses to it. Whether it is the quest for de-dollarization, or the quest for de-globalization, or the quest for making states great again, Nigeria is at the epicenter of what Africa represents. Now, the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, that framework, reminds us once again that Africa is the largest and probably the strongest continent in the world. It is the only one that has 55 countries. All the others come second and third. They line up behind Africa. So at the United Nations, for instance, Africa has the largest constituency. And part of the whole business of coalition building is the one that says you cannot really do anything without Africa. But Africa must get its acts together. And I think, that is where we are all going to. Of course, we cannot get our acts together if we don't become economically empowered. And that's where I think all of the things that Lagos State Governor has told us today must be put in proper perspective. We are tired of being a consumer continent. We're tired of consuming the things we don't produce. We have to produce the things that we consume. If we are not able to get a relative sense of self-sufficiency in food, in manufacturing, and so on, we are not ready to make progress. So I think that, to be fair to all of the contributions we have had today, if you want a sequential framework for how to proceed beyond now, you would say we have had 65 years. We have another 65 ahead of us, and many more beyond that. And as you get futuristic, you see a Nigeria that by 2050 would be one of the world's leading economies. And we are going to get there. The rest of Africa must team up with us. The rest of Africa should not, in Nigeria, we like to talk about bad belle. There is bad belle also within Africa. And the kinds of things that we are doing without being arrogant, people in Africa to team up with us. The point is, Nigeria can act alone. Nigeria needs the backing of the rest of Africa to do what we have the historical duty, which is historically imperative for us to do. So leadership is there. But thanks to Professor Lumumba, we must be reminded that Pan-Africanism, he talked about the Manchester Conference of 1945. That laid the foundation for African independence and liberation. But within the framework of the ideology of Pan-Africanism, which talks about the African unity. So we must say to the AU, this is the time to wake up. And the world talks about Africa rising. How's Africa rising? Africa has the critical minerals that the world needs. So we're at a vantage point where, again, we're up for the scramble. Everyone is scrambling over Africa. How do we navigate through using our advantages to the best benefits of all of our people? We can only navigate through properly when, and this is my final point, the point that has been made about common communities, about the incomplete state-building projects that we have across Africa. Those processes are incomplete because we haven't built communities of common purpose and collective goals. We must all find ourselves within those collective efforts that we have a commonwealth, that we all have a stake in. And therefore, we're able to say what happens to one affects all the others. We must not leave that to the trade unions alone. We must say the strength of one is the strength of all. That can only happen when we build a common society. And, a common society becomes the foundation for all that we want to do. Mr. Chairman, with your kind permission, we can take a few questions, a few comments.
On the sociological plane, this was the tough, where both white and black join under one roof, enjoying conviviality. Today, a lot of people think Premier Social Club means socials. At that point, the club had people who studied in England, who also were members of the British Army, even British Air Force, and getting back home there was discrimination. And they set up this for like minds, black and white. So that is the background of it. So the men of those days needed to do something about the issue of the moment. Island Club became a place where government would look up to for policy directives, which they had to implement. And now we have totally lost all of that. And that is why I commend the chairman and his management committee for bringing this to life today. Because this is what we are actually meant for. So at the end of the day, we had what they call business luncheon sessions. These business learning sessions, lectures and topics are generated, and the results, the papers are summarized and sent back to government. We have lost this. So saying, what are we to do? We say we are shakers and movers. What are we shaking indeed? If we do not have a gathering where we can put our